Hey everybody, this is Cyrus. Welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics, and I'm taking a hike here in the mountains outside of Barcelona, Spain. I'm not sure where this trail leads to, but I saw a sign saying there's some kind of like woodland museum if you follow this trail all the way. So maybe we'll see if we come out and find ourselves at some kind of museum. In the meantime, I figure in this video, I want to talk about the concept of ego. And I've mentioned ego before, and why I sometimes disagree with people who talk about ego in a derogatory sense, saying that, we have to give up the ego, and as a result of that, give up the individuality, and think more as a collective, I think, is one way to put it. And I think that this is more or less a incorrect way of interpreting the subject. So, as I've mentioned in past videos, we have to have an ego to be able to function in any kind of world that has a division of consciousness. When we're not all just one consciousness, we need to have a sense of separation to be able to operate successfully and to be able to interact with other people. But there is a way to define or understand the ego in a way that actually makes sense. And this relates to the definition of ego as a false sense of self. And so somebody on the forum brought up this point recently that this is the more true definition of what ego is. We have bicycles coming. Kind of a narrow path to bicycle, but anyway, so using the definition of a false sense of self, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're looking at how, by this definition, a fake version of you is very likely your biggest enemy in life, and it will have no positive byproduct on your life. And the more that we align with our real sense of self and an uninhibited sense of self, the more we are able to accomplish great things. So the way that ego, by this definition of it, grows is that we're trained from an early age to stifle who we are and to replace that with society's expectations. And you can see, because when you look at 2 and 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, they are not stifled by any kind of ego. They're just, unfiltered, and they say and do whatever is on their mind, including pooping when it's not appropriate to do so, among various other types of activities. And obviously, the issue with egoless toddlers and egoless kindergarten age kids is that they have the lack of ego. They are their real selves. They're uninhibited. Life's a big playground. They can be full of joy and happiness, but they don't have any life experience or any wisdom. So when I was a little kid, I think I was pretty difficult to deal with. And I always wanted everything, I always demanded things, and I threw a lot of temper tantrums. And God knows my parents were crazy enough as they were, but somehow I was able to, still insert my own control to always try to get what I wanted. Here's an interesting place. Where am I? This looks like the ruins of something. This looks like the ruins of I don't know what it is. So anyway. So obviously, while I was coming from an egoless state, it was also a state without development, without wisdom, and without empathy. At least not that much empathy for other people. And I did have it. Yeah, even from like, honestly, even from when I was like a little tiny kid, I had empathy. I cared about people, and I cared about animals. I wasn't out like torturing insects. I was actually saving insects. I'd see bugs drowning in water collection jugs, and I'd be out like rescuing them. That's kind of how I was operating. And you keep in mind, even when somebody is 3-4 years old, it doesn't mean that they are 3 or 4 years old. I mean, as we talked about in this channel, there's such a thing as past lives, and oftentimes our greater personalities are coming through. But when we incarnate as a kid, then it's kind of like we've forgotten all of those lessons. We have to relearn all of it. And oh yeah, by the way, if you haven't learned this lesson yet, it really helps out if you like these videos, share them, and if you haven't done so yet, please hit that subscribe button. Help keep this channel going. It's right down there, as well as the notification bell. It really helps out. So, I wonder what's in this mysterious door. So that's the thing about being a kid. It's like the whole world is an adventurous place. Taking a walk like this. Oh, it's not a door, it's a fountain. Taking a walk like this when you're a kid, it's such a big adventure. And so what is it that prevents you from having that perspective again as an adult? Why does that go away? And I think it's a big shame that it does go away. We're actually literally taught to stop having fun, to stop seeing life as an adventure, and to become inhibited and basically start worrying about what society thinks. And so it says there, Museo Verdaguer, Pasieg del Platans, Parc de Colserola. I don't know. Well, we'll see. So it is actually a shame that we inhibit our imaginative abilities, we inhibit who we really are, and we develop this kind of fake persona to try to keep everybody else happy. And so, people get these midlife crises, and it's like they're trying to become a 5-year-old again sometimes, and they want to get back to an authentic state. And this is an admirable thing to do, and something that we probably should do, but just we shouldn't do it into some kind of extreme where we spend all our money or have an existential crisis. But what I've noticed, what I've observed in my time on this planet is this kind of fake personality really begins to develop, I think, adolescence, maybe when we're like 12 years old, 13 years old, it starts developing. And by the time we're teenagers, we're like freaked out about what people think of us. And then we're ushered off to university. And boy, university is a lot of brainwashing, isn't it? And so that just keeps going. It keeps reinforcing this until we've forgotten who we were. And then if we go into the working world, I mean, if we're lucky enough to get a white-collar job, then we'll be a lot of white-collar brainwashing and just focusing on clocking in and clocking out and serving some employer for the rest of our lives, make somebody else rich. Or we have some working class job, but it's going to be the same thing. Oh, check this out. It's a wild boar and a bunch of baby boars just running around the trail. I saw some last night, and they're probably it's not a good thing. They're really social. They just walk up to you, and I think they expect food. Oh, look at that, little baby piglets. They look just like javelinas back in Arizona. Maybe we'll get on video of me getting trampled by a wild pig. Oh, that's wild. Look at these little piglets. That's crazy. I'm so lucky. This is a good video. Oh, okay. So they get food from the people here. Look at this fat mama here. Well, that's it for me. I guess you win, Claudia. I'm never gonna eat pork again. But anyway, so where was I? So I was talking about Right. So the ego development, basically everything we do, school, jobs, all of this just keeps reinforcing this idea to shed off whatever it is we really want to do, appease other people. Or sometimes a false sense of self happens because we have an expectation or an idea in our mind. Like my dear brother, God bless him, but growing up, everybody knew he had this kind of sense of superiority over other people. But we all know he wasn't. I mean, he was really, really good at everything he did. He could go into martial arts and excel. He decided he wanted to become a pilot, and he was excelling at that. And later in life, he suffered from really bad anxiety issues, and excelling so much when he was an adolescent and a teenager, it didn't really pay dividends later on. But he was also cultivating like this really egoic personality where he believed that he was superior to everybody else around him. And this didn't pay off so well for him at all, because that wasn't really how he felt. It wasn't really who he was. But he created this identity for himself that he was, the greatest kind of God's gift to earth, walking around. And sometimes people would believe that about him too. And again, with his hobbies, he just kick ass at all of them. Like when I was a kid and he was older than me, like we'd play paintball and he was just winning every tournament and just destroying it. Paintball is like a simulated war game, and he was like an action hero. So it'd be like 30 people versus 30 people, and my brother would single-handedly eliminate like 15 of the 30 and then win the game for everybody else. And so he became like this legend on the paintball fields, the paintball tournaments, because he was so freaking good at it. Where is this? I don't think this trail continues. Kind of does. So, right, so he was so good at this stuff, and this just, we all made fun of him because we're like, his head is just going to keep swelling and swelling and swelling. The more he excels at these things, because it's just reinforcing this narrative that he's created of being superior to everybody else. And meanwhile, it was actually kind of pushing people away from him, which isn't good. I'm going to go back down that steps. And so, at the end of the day, like this fake sense of identity, it didn't help him. In fact, it came back to bite him in the ass. I don't mean to disclose all this stuff about him. I know he'll never watch this channel in a million years, so I don't really care. But, it came back around with some, having to fight off alcohol, like runs in my family. Got 3 people down so far from the alcoholism in my family, my parents and one of my other brothers. Interesting. What are these, like little shadowy demon-looking creatures? The smiley faces. Oh, okay. There was stains, and then somebody put this smiley face and the frowny face on them. So it didn't help him at all. That superiority kind of disappeared, and he found himself kind of alone and miserable in the world. I mean, he had his wife, has had his wife, but he didn't cultivate proper relationships based on like needing mentorship or needing to learn how the world works and come at it from a position of humility to be able to succeed and not get trampled on by bad jobs and the way life can very, very easily trample us if we're not careful. Let's see, how much time do we have left? Oh, we have like 6 minutes left in the video. So this was a big lesson for him and a big lesson for me as well. And I saw this coming, and I knew he was going to have a difficult time. Now, I'm not like super successful, but I have accomplished the stuff I've wanted to accomplish. I think I lead a pretty happy life. I'm a perpetual bachelor. I don't know when or if I'm ever going to tie the knot at this point, but I've just really enjoyed my life, doing this. I've only worked jobs that are meaningful to me. I've been able to make it as an author, do my own businesses, do a lot of stuff like that, and I feel very fortunate. I've been to like 45 countries. I've been able to be a mentor for other people. But I wouldn't have been able to accomplish any of these things if I had believed I was superior to everybody else, if I was using an egoic sense of judgment. The big point I want to get across here is that if you can get back to a pre-ego state and attune yourself to your real self, whether you don't have a sense of this kind of separation between you and other people, where you feel interconnected enough that you can kind of look at people and look at things, look at nature, look at the environment with like the sense of love, and this is a massive advantage in life. Now, it's the same way as when you were a kid. If you're hiking in the woods like this, and this is why I chose to do this video, hiking in the woods, to illustrate this. Hiking in the woods as a kid, you have all this adventure and you imagine stuff. You imagine that you're like an adventurer or something. At least the boys do. You walk out with a cardboard sword and shield and off to go, fight goblins or something. You have this big imagination. That's because you're attuned to everything around you. You are absorbed in everything that you're experiencing. And spiritualist types of people will call this unconditional love or source consciousness, and I see it as just not being inhibited and coming at things from that kind of pure loving state of energy where you're not overthinking, overanalyzing, and worried about things. You're just playing and being imaginative, having fun, exploring, and that's kind of like our natural state. And the thing is, when you're doing that, when you're operating like this, you become really good at the stuff that you do. So if you're playing basketball, and you reach a point where you can play basketball without thinking about playing basketball, and it just happens what we call flow state, and at that point you're probably going to be a world-class basketball player. So if you're an artist and you can operate from a point of flow state, you're going to be a world-class artist, and everyone's going to look up to you and wonder how you do it. And in that, the false sense of self is going to creep back in again because, like my brother, you're going to think, well, I'm superior to everybody else. Look at all these neophyte basketball players, and look how good I am. And I'm about to get drafted to the NBA, and look at me. I'm just, I'm the best there is. And then it's going to come back around to bite you in the ass. But I think the real masters are able to keep this sort of sense of interconnectedness going and be able to keep the ego at bay, keep kind of what we could call the inner child active, that is just connected to who you really are and is thinking like that and is not inhibited. And one way to test this out, and this is even homework that you guys can try out, comes to making conversations with strangers. Okay, so a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old doesn't matter. Besides maybe children who are born with like autism, you're not going to meet kids who are inhibited and afraid to talk to strangers or anybody. They're just blah, 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 blah. They're like, ooh, look, somebody. Here's my crayons. Here's something I drew. Hi, random person in the supermarket. Because they're not inhibited like that. But we condition ourselves. Social conditioning makes us afraid to talk to people, afraid to open up to people, and just scared of people in general. And self-development, a big part of self-development is, getting back to that point of being a 4-year-old again, a 3-year-old again, but now with the wisdom of being an adult with that. And so if you can get to a point where you can go up to people and talk to them and meet them easily without being self-conscious and worried about something about yourself. It's like, oh, I'm too old, and I'm too this, I'm too that. Maybe they think I'm creepy. Maybe they think I'm crazy. If you're not thinking along those lines because you're uninhibited, you just have a unconditional acceptance of who you are and also unconditional acceptance of who they are. You're not judging somebody. You're not looking at somebody like, well, I probably have a nicer car than this guy has. If you're extending this out to other people, man, people really love to feel like they're not being judged by somebody, that they're interacting with somebody in a wholesome way. And I do think I'm able to do this to an extent, and sometimes, as kind of an empathic person, I don't have the energy to socialize that much all the time, but it's a little bit like a powerful cannon, and when I turn it on, it has a pretty powerful effect. If I'm going to a social thing and I just make small talk and say, hey, how's it going? Like, I meet people who really, really want to get to know me, and that's great and allows me to make friends in places I go to. Whereas other people, if you're meeting somebody and you're judging them and you're judging yourself, you're caught up in all that egoic self-talk, then people will feel this, and they'll feel that energy, and they'll want to get away from you. So the litmus test about how well you're able to shrug off that ego, a lot of that comes down to socializing. So it doesn't matter if you've given yourself a label like an introvert, whatever. It doesn't matter. You can still practice this, and you should practice it, because that will determine, how much of this kind of fake sense of self that you're really connected to. But at the end of the day, though, don't judge yourself, and always learn to be as accepting of who you are as possible. Even if there's things about yourself that are flawed, maybe you need to lose weight, maybe you need to be nicer to people, whatever it is, you can still accept yourself and forgive yourself and work on those things. So you don't have to be mean to yourself. And don't be mean to yourself if you can't do this challenge easily either. But it's just one way of kind of testing the waters and seeing how connected you are or not. Well, I guess that's it for this video. We didn't make it in time to this museum in the woods. But but if you like this stuff, maybe grab a book of mine like Understanding Life After Death or The Afterlife and Beyond. Both of those are on Amazon. You can sign up for the classes or become a patron. All that stuff really helps support this work I'm doing. If you want to get these videos out there, get the message out there, then I encourage you. You can sign up for the classes at Afterlife University, afterlifetopics.com/university. And maybe I'll see you soon. So this is Cyrus, and until next time.